Welcome to the SIWIKE Podcast, the only podcast that shares the stuff you didn't know you needed to know about jobs, careers, and life. The SIWIKE Podcast, the stuff I wish I knew earlier.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the SIWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier podcast. We're here again with our guest host, Linda Pham. Linda, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing, Luki?
I'm doing phenomenal as always. And we thought we'd have a conversation on how to improve your social skills as an introvert, or how to thrive as an introvert in an extroverted world. But just kind of demystifying the terms and like kind of outing ourselves as introverts and then helping those who identify in the same way and kind of get through that. So having a bunch of discussions, conversations, and see where it goes. I went to the Googles and did some research on terms of definitions, and the first one that came up was a shy and reticent person, which I don't like to use as kind of the normal definition, but that's what most people think. Further down, there's a psychology definition where it's a person predominantly concerned with their own thoughts and feelings other than with external things, which, okay, I kind of get that as well. The one that I like to use is someone who gets their energy from a small group of people, and sometimes that small group of people is by themselves. So what would you say, or how do you define like introvert in kind of your daily usage?
Yeah, I definitely think we have to debunk that myth that an introvert is a shy person.
Yes.
Because I've had a lot of people come up to me and they're like, "You're lying, you're not an introvert," right? And there are a lot of extroverts out there who are shy. Like they might like being around people, but they don't know how to interact. Yeah. So I think similar to your definition and the psychology one, that it's all about energy expenditure. So I like to think of it as like, say you have a bag full of coins, and that's how the extrovert. Actually, that's how the introvert might start their day. And then once they have a social interaction, they give that coin away. Yeah. Whereas the extrovert has like an empty bag, and every time they talk to someone, it gets filled up. This is where it's like, it's not as straightforward. But like for me, I love one-on-one interactions, especially when someone where you have a really good conversation, you can go on and on and on and on. So I think definitely it has to do with like how you get energized. Yeah. Like I have a lot of friends who are introverted. I remember what my sister once said, "Oh, are you just three people who sit together and don't say anything?" And I was like, "What is that?" So yeah, definitely more about energy expenditure. And just because someone is introverted doesn't mean they don't know how to socialize with people, and they're just more reflective with their thoughts and maybe don't say the first thing that comes into mind. And maybe this is where it's more about like where your brain chemistry might be altered a bit differently.
For sure. Yeah, I like the coin purse analogy where you're giving out. And for the introverts, if you don't see very many people that day, that's a good day because your coin purse is still full. Whereas if you're an extrovert and you don't see people, then yours is empty, and actually you didn't have a really good day. And I like the difference between kind of shy and introverted, because I actually classify myself as an outgoing introvert, right? Because I don't mind initiating conversations, but I'd rather do it with one or two people. Because typically if you see me out and about like with one or two people, I'm pretty good. I can talk with most of them. Once it gets to like 3, 4, 5 people, then I take a back seat and other people kind of take the spotlight, which I think might help folks that are of the introverted persuasion to realize that there is a difference. And there's this other term called an ambivert, which apparently you can switch in context between the two, where people sometimes say that I'm an ambivert because in certain contexts, I'm like the most outgoing person, and in other contexts, like, did you say anything all night? That sort of thing could be just really listening and paying attention, that sort of thing. So all those I think are helpful. And for me, another context that I like to share, especially in the context of like networking and social settings, is sometimes you're just new. Like if you've never had a coffee chat with a professional or something like that, how do you expect to be any good, right? What I often say in a class is like, well, who here knows how to play the piano? And then I'll pick someone who didn't put up their hand. And I said, well, if you went up to the class and I had a piano in front and I said, play, right? How good would you be, right? And they're like, well, not very good. Versus I say, okay, what if I just go to you and say network, right? how good would you be? Probably not very good. But over time, you get better and better, because I know I've learned a lot. Like, I was horrible at networking, not very good. And now I do okay, right? So just some things which I think folks need to hear in order to kind of demystify what that is. I'd love if you're willing to share some of your kind of introversion or your social skills evolution, I guess, a little bit of that, going from, well, introverted to still introverted, but developing your social skills along the way. Would you be able to share your story?
Yeah, for sure. So growing up, I was really quiet, really shy. And obviously then I like to be approached first, and then I would have a conversation with someone. But I think moving the shift from high school to university, you realize it's a bigger playing field. You're like, there's so much more people I can meet. And like, you do have to put yourself out there if you want to build more connections and become more social. And I think a lot, like, what's really important in terms of like growing your career and keeping that in mind, because not having like just good grades is going to get you anywhere. So early on, I learned, you know what, I'm going to join student groups. I want to find people of a similar mindset, and building that leadership skills, volunteer, really, really helps, because you start being like, when you're on a committee, then that's when you're sort of in charge of doing things. People look to you for things. And so regularly running events, that sort of exposure at least first gets you comfortable with working with people. And you'll find there are others that are more extroverted. So then you lean on them as like mentorship or just observing, because I think that's the one like key thing about an introvert. It's like, you're very observant. You need to see how things work and think about it. And then as much as you think about it, you also have to do and try. So if maybe the role is like, oh, now you're forced to like go and promote and do things, and it's a team effort, that's your task. It's being assigned those tasks. So that's where I slowly started developing. And I think what really, really helped was when I was part of the Human Resources Student Association, because my background in HR, I was like, okay, I want to be in this student group. And that's when you have more of an advantage connecting with professionals and different colleagues of that sort, because now you're sort of like running it. Instead of being the person who attends the events, you're the one who's organizing it, and you get this like special treatment in terms of like, oh, I get to interact with this person. And this is where you'll find that at the end of the day, the professionals coming in they're just humans. And I think a lot of us, as like, when you're a student in that mindset, you're like, I don't know how to talk to these people. They're older. I don't know what to do. What do I say to them? And then you're like, no, you'll see 20 years later, they're actually the same person like 20 years ago. Everyone's just a kid trying to like navigate life, right? So I think instead of putting your mindset of like, what do I say to them? What do I say to them? Just be curious about like what they do and ask questions. So again, it's like exposure therapy in terms of like, the more you get accustomed to things. And then I think I became most social when I got my first job in HR, because I realized every week I had to do orientations for new employees coming in, and I was the first person everyone's communicating with. And then I realized that people don't talk to others in different departments, but I get to, because it was my job. So the more like it became an everyday thing, I realized, oh, okay, you know what? Now I'm super social. Everyone knows who I am. And I guess it means you just have to put yourself out there. If not, you force yourself to be in that position. But if I had not been, like, I don't think I would have the opportunities or skill sets in my life now. So it's sort of like thinking for your future self, so that your future self can come back and think and thank you for the present version you are now.
For sure. I think a lot of that echoes with my story, but quite a bit differently, where I was pretty introverted up until my final year of university, where I would have like a study cube. I would have like the couch that I sat in and read my books all throughout first, second, third year. And then I, for whatever reason, decided to call it reinvent myself. And maybe it was because I was in my final year, I was a little bit more confident. I said, you know what, I'm going to join a club. And in typical Asian fashion, I joined the badminton club. Right? So I made friends there. And because some of them were like first, second, third years, they like looked up to me because I'm in my final year. It's like, oh, okay. I have no cachet with any of these folks, but because I'm old, right, for lack of a better thing, then I was a little higher status. And then I realized that, okay, I can make friends. I can have conversations. And I think it goes back to what I said about being new, right? just with a little bit of practice, you kind of hone those skills. Again, I was not the world's greatest by any means, but at least I could have a conversation. And luckily, the group of friends that were there were accommodating, and with a little bit of success, it turned more. And then I ended up landing a job in consulting as a coder, as a developer, right? But then that environment turned me into someone that had to be social, right? Because they had like cocktail parties, networking events, whatever, on a regular basis. And if you didn't do it, then you'd kind of be held back. And I remember many a time where I would make excuses to not go to these events. It's like, oh, I got a report that needs to be done, or I got to do this thing. Meanwhile, I didn't really have anything. But then after a while, after a couple of years, actually, probably my second or third year, I realized, you know what? This is not helping me. I see people doing way better than me because they have the relationships. Like I'm probably better technically in terms of the stuff that I can do, but they're better in terms of like explaining and really with the relationships they have. So I made a conscious effort, and by making a decision, okay, I have conversations and I'm socially awkward in certain situations, but others, it's actually fun and I actually enjoy the conversation. So what's the difference? And I found for me, it's when I was like learning something from someone or teaching something to someone, I love those conversations. But when I was just talking about like the weather and the sports teams and the superficial stuff, it wasn't as fun and interesting. So that would be my go-to in future conversations. And then, now I improve and I'm a little bit better and can break the ice a little bit more and then get into those more meaningful, deep conversations. But it was probably just like yourself, where it was through exposure and therapy, I guess my own exposure therapy, just putting myself in situations and doing that. So, and I love if I don't even know if you can remember, but maybe that first instance where like that decision to either sign up for the club or to, I don't know, nominate yourself for a director or executive level type of thing, was there any kind of issues or thoughts with that, or something that helped you to navigate that? And then like the more responsibilities and things like that, or can you recall any of those types of early moments that might help folks?
Yeah. So I wanted to join the Vietnamese Student Association because I was like, oh, it'd be cool to meet peers that are similar to me. And because my first year experience with that group was so fun, it was like so enjoyable, and I wanted to give that back to the future generations. That really drove me, because I think some of the executives are graduating and they left. I was like, oh no, who's gonna pass on the legacy? Well, I'm here. And I think it's similar to what you said in terms of like, oh, you're in your fourth year and now everyone's looking up to you because you're the oldest. It comes down to like confidence, right? Like I think, once you're there, you're like, I know how things work. I trust that I can do this because I've seen the ropes. Someone new coming in doesn't. And that intrinsic drive, I think, is key. And I think something you really like that you mentioned was really cool was conversations where you felt like you were teaching something. That's so key when it comes to networking, because the more your interactions feel authentic and genuine, the more you want to maintain that, right? Because if it's like, oh, we're not clicking, and sometimes it's hard, like you don't know what to ask when you're looking at someone. Like I hate being the conversation starter. If it is the weather, let's see where it leads. Like I'm like, okay, well this weekend is Thanksgiving weekend. What do you do for Thanksgiving? So that's how you know what your 5 W's and how like whoever, like that's all you have to start with. When people go, I don't want to be curious about, just look at the person. What do you have in common? Like just think about, oh, maybe we're in the same room. What have you observed? Like things like that. It's obviously comes with time and practice. But yeah, I think that's, I don't remember.
No, I guess it's some advice and coaching around like how to get started as an introvert, having those conversations. So I liked what you said about like the different contexts. One acronym that I found was helpful in kind of the small talk world is FORD, FORD, which stands for family, occupation, recreation, and dreams, right? So a lot of people like talking about their family. So, and not all things are alike for everybody. So this is where the art of small talk versus the science of it comes in, because a lot of people, if you're in a professional networking, you focus on that second one, this is occupation, right? Their job and things like that. And then once in a while, if you can bring in family, like, oh, what did you do over the weekend? Well, I spent time with my kids. Oh, tell me more about your kids, right? I don't have kids, but I have some younger siblings, younger cousins or whatever. Any sort of relatedness. And then eventually you get to that last one, which is dreams, right? You don't usually start with that, right? Because that's a little too big for small talk. But when you can kind of move your way down, then it can help. So those are a good acronym, FORD, for folks that are trying to get into that small talk, getting over their, call it introversion, shyness, the newness of everything, and start that conversation. And one thing that I recommend everybody to do if you're on this journey is to take a couple of minutes at the end of each day and reflect and learn, right? So all the conversations I had today, what did I do well? What could I do better? Right? And those two things, do it the next time. And I wish that I was more purposeful in that, because I just kind of, I don't know, drudged through it and somehow it worked. But realizing that, oh no, you could actually proactively get better, that was something that took me a really long time to figure out. And I think it's very helpful what you said about like being in the Vietnamese Student Association, right? So not everybody joined the Vietnamese Student Association, but whatever is the relevant organization, and starting off as a member, so that you know how it works, couldn't be helpful. And then, hey, you know what? I want this thing to continue, so maybe become an executive, and then from there you can continue on as well. So for sure. What are some of the other things that have helped you in your journey to become more social, develop your social skills, or I don't know, less seemingly introverted along the way? Was there a lot of proactive research or development that was done, or is it really just gradually over time it happened, or something else?
I mean, definitely life experience, but I think as well, I've been lucky that my school courses and even workshops talk a lot about communication. And when people think communication, I think they don't understand the concept of like comprehension, because a lot of communication isn't just like what you say. And sure, you could be articulate with your thoughts, but if it's not being received or understood by the other person, then is your communication really effective? In terms of listening, are you understanding what's being said? So there's always like courses on like, oh, how do you receive that message? How do you paraphrase that back to someone? Active listening. Like for me, it's a little bit of a natural skill that I have. Like I know that I'm a good listener, but have I really understood the message you told me? I don't know. So in order to do that, I gotta maybe paraphrase what you said, or and if that person like acknowledges that you're like, oh yeah, okay, I've understood what you said. I think it comes to just, like I said, exposure therapy. So you can practice this in your situations with your everyday life, with your friends. So like hopefully you're not super isolated when you have people that you're talking to deal with that. Sure, like there's so much resources online. Like I think you can watch YouTube videos, podcasts, YouTube. What I said YouTube already. Google. Just to at least research, but like you can't build upon it until you actually go out there and try it, right? So I think if you feel that your friendships are valuable, you want to try building a friendship like to the next level. What are tips that you need to do? Google those tips and try it. I don't know. I guess your friends are now a science experiment. And then I guess if you want to apply that to your professional life, the lens of, yes, we're professionals, but like I said, at the end of the day, we are still human, and putting that less focus on networking as such a, like, oh my God, I need to do this to get a job is so much pressure. Like, I'm going to share a story of like a recent thing that people might not think is networking, but it's networking. So in my condo building, there's a security guard I always come by and I say hi to, right? And he's a really nice guy, works these late shifts. And sometimes I'm like, oh, he's working late, I'll have a nice conversation with him. Or I'm this person who picks up my Amazon package. So instead of like, hi, thanks for my package, I'm like, oh, what's your name? Like, I always see you. And then you can ask questions on like, how long have you been working here? Yes. So like I said, the whole 5 W's and the how. And eventually he found out, obviously, that I'm in HR, I was recruiting, and he told me that he had a daughter who just graduated school, and he's like, can you help her with her, like with her resume or finding a job? Is there any internships? I'm like, sure. That is a form of networking. Like, it's as simple as that, right? Or going to the grocery store, or like I know someone who was working at Starbucks, and she just finished school, and she was in the same building as these ad agency people who would always get their coffee from her and, you know, share what she did as work. So it's okay to talk about yourself too and your strengths. I think then it comes down to confidence and knowing yourself really well, being curious about other people. But how to really practice that?
Yeah.
You just have to go out there and be in the world. I don't know. You know, when you're like good at it, and now you're like, I don't know how
I think a lot of it stems from action. You have to be doing it. But there are different like kind of books or courses and podcasts and like this one that you should be listening to and improving. But I guess it goes into, there's always opportunities to improve wherever you are. So the security guard, the concierge, the person at Starbucks serving your coffee, right? So probably don't want to do it like in the heart of rush hour when everybody's trying to get their order, but maybe when it's a little when it's a little less busy, you can say, I see you on a regular basis, get to know them a little bit more. That can be super helpful, and kind of developing those relationships will help you in the context when let's call it more higher stakes, right? When you have that I don't know, person that's potentially your future boss or like a senior person that can help you, then you've already gotten comfortable enough in engaging in those conversations there. And maybe it starts with your friends as you suggested, or maybe call it arm's length friends. So that person in class that you say hi to, but you don't really know. Or like the group of friends that you hang out with, a core group, and maybe you have like the extended group where people are in the periphery, which again, you know them, but you don't really know them. Those could be great folks to call it practice with, as you said, the experiments on as well. But there are also resources where I know there's like the concept of like levels of listening, right? To understand that at level 1, there's like listening for yourself, which is the people who are just waiting for like a pause in the conversation so that they can respond, and they're not really paying attention. They just want to say something. Then there's like content and context, right? As level 2 and 3. And then there's like meaning, which is what's not being said, even though you've had it. Because I think I hear that men tend to live in like levels 2 and 3. And if you're in a relationship where you're arguing and they someone says like you haven't even heard a word I said, and they can repeat it for verbatim. Well, they're probably level 2, but they miss the subtleties with the sarcasm or the way you said it, the tonality. So they miss the meaning of it. And then the understanding is really validating. You know what? This is what I interpreted. Can you confirm? Because sometimes we project, or we have all these understanding, or we think they said that and we interpret. But if they haven't actually confirmed, we don't know anything, right? It's just a story we're putting in our head. So there are ways of practicing, but you got to take each and every one of those concepts and do it, right? And practice and get a little bit better today than you were yesterday, and keep on going. And the W5H, hopefully folks are going through it in their head, like who, what, why, when, how, if folks don't know what those are. But I think a lot of useful tips are in here. They're for folks that are on the journey to improve their I guess, their social skills, even as an introvert, because like we started off with, both of us identify as introverts, right? I would rather be in a small group of people than a big group of people, but I can talk, I can get to know you, and I can learn a little bit more, and I'm pretty decent at that. But after like a big cocktail networking event, I'll be like, I'm so glad that's over, and I'll have to recharge for a little while. Are there any other kind of tips, tricks, or lessons that you'd want to share with folks, the introverts out there that might want to improve, or maybe even for the extroverts that should do things to improve their relationships with us introverts?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's see. So I actually took an improv class, but only because work was promoting this. So I was like, whoa, this is very interesting, right? Like, I'm like, I cannot do improv, but my manager recommended it. She's like, Linda, I think you should try this. It was like improv for work. And essentially, it really does build on your communication skills. It was like a 3-hour workshop, and it was an exercise where like you would throw a ball to someone, and then we throw all these random objects and see if we were receiving it. And then we were yelling out different words. And I think it was basically, the send receive. That was the first message of that exercise. One that resonated with me though, there was a pose we had to do in the middle of this circle. So there's a bunch of us standing in a circle, and there's only one person in, and they're holding a pose, and they can only get out of that until another person jumps in to kind of save them to get out. And there was no strategy, like whoever goes in goes in, and the person that's standing there is kind of like waiting, right? So they're holding this pose, and until someone jumps in, like you realize someone's in their head. They're like thinking, what pose should I do? Blah, 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 blah. But the moment you put that focus onto that other person and just go out there and jump in, save them, then everyone was going, and it didn't have to like flow, but it was fun. And the purpose of that was that we're in our heads so much.
Yeah.
And life is just improv. At the end of the day, when someone says something to you, you're reacting to that. And I think with the cocktail events, over time, you're in there, you're going to react to it.
Yep.
And then you're going to realize it's a bit routine what you're saying over and over and over. And then you get more comfortable with it. And you realize, oh, well, I'm here now. This is kind of the flow. This is the gist of it. If you need to see someone do it first, that's totally fine. See how they're doing it, then mimic, right? So I think it's okay to go in with observation. That's how I like to learn. Because you can watch all the YouTube videos you want. Although there's someone named Vin Jiang. He talks all about communications, really effective. This Australian guy. Yeah, really good. So he's someone I recommend. He has really good tips, but I try to think that in my day-to-day and just be present when you're interacting with someone. So if life is improv, like I gotta make sure I'm listening to you as present as I can. And that's the issue I think a lot of people do. They think in their head like, well, how do I respond to that? But then they're not listening to the context of the full sentence. So instead they're like, oh, well, how should I say this? You're not listening to the person anymore, right? Because you're like, oh, this is in my head. So I think the more present and grounded you are in the situation, and then try to recall what they said, then you can add your thoughts to it. I think people are more in their head losing their thoughts. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to...
I love what you said about life is improv, right? And if you want to take improv lessons to improve your life, hey, that's probably not a bad idea. Or even things like Toastmasters to get you out public speaking. But nothing kind of beats being there and just having conversation. Again, it doesn't have to start big. It can just be with like the cashier or the waitress or something. Like the hospitality folks, that's what they're trained to do. So you might as well have conversations with practice with them, and then you can extend out to other folks. I think that's beneficial. And Vin Jiang, I have seen him around, so I'll look at his work a little bit more. But again, it goes back to doing things. It went kind of full circle where you talked about the levels of listening, like people in their head, just waiting to respond. Being present, I think, is a great skill, and listening in general. So maybe if more folks want to meditate and be mindful and stuff like that, take a look at those types of things. And what I took from it is to avoid what people call like the awkward silence, right? Because sometimes a pause or like not talking is actually a good thing, right? And you don't always have to fill it. Like let's get rid of the awkward and just call it, it's silence. It's a pause. It's actually good. And it's only awkward if you make it awkward. Right? So being used to that. So I think there's a lot of
exactly
there. And if there's maybe one tip that we'd give the introverts out there to start doing now, what is one tip that you suggest them to undertake as we kind of close off this episode?
Nike, just do it. Like, and if you really need assistance, watch YouTube videos, find a course, just so that you build that confidence in order to do it. Because I think that at the end of the day, if you don't believe you can do it, you don't have the confidence, you're not forced in a role that will make you do it, you're never going to get over that fear. And it's on that other side of fear that you're waiting for, right? It's that consequence. Like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, what that you didn't try, or when you tried that, like, no one, you're not going to say something bad unless you're like thinking of saying something bad. I think you're going to learn in that situation. So good or bad, it's better to like go and do it than regret all the opportunities that you didn't do because you let this hold you back.
Right. Yeah. And it's really neither good or bad. It's just, what do you learn and take away from the situation? That's important. And then what came to mind is there's, I think a quote that goes something like, it's harder to think your way into action versus act your way into thinking, right? Because if you start with the action first, eventually you'll believe it. But if you think your way to it, like it almost never happens, right? Because you get in your head, especially as
Luki.
that's the stuff. That's the stuff that I love. But yeah, take any of those, but stop them as quotes and turn them into action. I think is super important. But Linda, really appreciate you being here and sharing a little bit of your insights. So hopefully all those introverts out there will go out and be a little bit more social than they were yesterday. So thanks for the conversation, and hopefully we'll have you back for a future episode.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Linda.
Thanks for joining us on the SIWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier, the podcast. If you like the podcast, please subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you found this podcast. And if you can give us a review, that would be very appreciated. Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn at Luki Danu, LUKIDANU, and the same on most social media platforms. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks. Bye.